I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580s. It's Moving Mountain Mondays on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, where our very special contributors, both Mr. Ernest Krim III, as well as Madam President Teresa Hoard Owens, the General Minister of the United Disciples of Christ, is our guest in the second hour. I'm grateful that both persons will be participating in our show today. And I can't help but reflect for just a moment upon when I think about Teresa Hoard Owens. I can't help but think about the Roman Empire's occupation of Judea during the era of the first century that ultimately made a judgment to crucify Jesus of Nazareth. I was driving down Stony Island Avenue just earlier today, and I saw a column on 95th and Stony Island Avenue of literally hundreds of Humvees that are obviously being prepositioned here in the city of Chicago as Donald Trump makes a decision to not only enforce the immigration codes of the United States, but he has a sliding ruler when it comes to Chicago. He's not sticking to message or to mission. He says he's coming to Chicago to fight crime. And to fight crime, that means he's not coming here just to enforce immigration law. He's also coming here to whoop some Negroes, man. He's going to put a whooping on Chicago, and he's fairly unapologetic about it. He says, we are born into the world as criminals. I mean, what does it matter? At age 2, we're predestined. It is our destiny to be criminals. And so anyone, particularly the nation's leader, who has that kind of attitude and disposition about the citizens that he represents, whether they voted for him or not, these are deeply troubling times in the United States of America. And we've learned lessons from Los Angeles. Now that the courts have ruled and given the president of the United States to have these roving federal patrols in Los Angeles, in Chicago, the president of the United States promises that he is going to expand the federal presence in multiple cities throughout the United States, mostly blue cities. We're going to talk about that in this hour from someone who's lived the experience with police confrontation. Mr. Ernest Krim III is an Emmy-nominated producer, public teacher, anti-racist educator, and hate crime victor. Yes, that is, he won. Who uses Black historical narratives to empower and educate through a culturally equitable lens. Mr. Krim, a South Side of Chicago native and University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana graduate, is a former high school history teacher and educator of 12 years who now advocates for social justice issues and teaches Black history to the world through the social media and with platforms that reach roughly 4 million people each month as of 2024. Ernest, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Reverend Jesse, it's always a pleasure to be here with you today. Can't wait to have this conversation.
I am so grateful that you're here. You know, I know we're going to talk about this throughout the hour, your book on how Black history saved your life. But in these 2 minutes, in this first 2 or 3 minutes that we have in this first segment, share with us what happened to you briefly, if you don't mind, in your story.
Yes. You know, I often say that history doesn't merely repeat itself, it operates in cycles. And some will say that history rhymes as well. So on July 30th, 2016, my wife and I dealt with a hate crime towards the end of the summer as we were beginning to make our way back to the school season as educators. And this happened on the south side of Chicago, not far from what you were talking about on Stony Island, and happened at the South Shore Cultural Center at an event that was 99% Black. And we dealt with this hate crime coincidentally during Trump's first campaign to become the president. And during that time, you would notice around the country that hate crimes were on the rise due to his rhetoric. You would also know that around that time that when he tried to come to Chicago in March of that year, that he had to cancel his event because of the protests. So my wife and I became the targets of a woman who I believe was emboldened because of that rhetoric, because she was also with 2 other Black folks, and she decided to call us the N-word and eventually spit on us and towards us because of the vitriol she had after we grabbed a beanbag that we thought she was done using. I was recording it as it escalated, not realizing it would become a crime. And it eventually became a viral, I don't like to say sensation for it, but it became a viral video that inspired me to take my teachings out the classroom.
I'm particularly proud of the way that you handled that. It certainly led to our ability to work together today because some of us might have taken it in our hands and it might have been a little bit more complicated had someone with the kind of reason that you implore. When we come forward, we are going to talk about how history has saved your life. And I'm sure that you reflected upon Emmett Till, you reflected upon every Black man in that moment who's ever lived, upon what your reaction should be in that moment. I think these reactions matter when we prepare to confront the National Guard here in the city of Chicago. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Dr. Nicolai Corte. Let's preserve Black land stories before they're lost forever. I want to personally invite you to be a part of something historic. As journalist in residence for the Black Land Lost Narrative Archive Project, I've joined forces with powerhouse attorney and social justice champion George Fothery, the man determination, only to lose it through violence, legal loopholes, forced sales, and systematic racism. What's been taken goes far beyond dirt and deeds. It's the erasure of wealth, identity, and legacy. That's why we've launched the Black Land Lost Narrative Archive Project, a national effort to collect, protect, and preserve the stories of Black land lost before they're buried, forgotten, or erased altogether. Because there's power in telling Black stories, there is resistance in remembering, and there's justice in being seen and heard. This is where you come in. We're inviting you to be a part of this historic Black narrative archive. If you or someone you know has experienced land loss, displacement, or forced property sales, your story deserves to be heard and remembered. Your story belongs in this archive. Your truth matters not just to your family, but to our collective future. Visit blacklandlost.org today. Fill out our simple intake form and add your voice to the National Archive of Remembrance, Resilience, and Reckoning. Let's make these stories live on, not in whispers, but on the record. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Dr. Nicolai Corte, and as always, we welcome your feedback.
Y'all ready for Gillette's best shave? Try Gillette Labs with 5 ultra-thin blades, a built-in exfoliating bar, a precision trimmer on the back for sharp lineups. Gillette Labs delivers that smooth shave. Plus, and check this out, with one refill, you'll get up to 30 shaves. And on average, the blades last 50% longer than Gillette Fusion. Got something special coming up and you gotta look good? Check out Gillette Labs, the best a man can get. Gillette Labs also available in heated.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on Moving Mountain Mondays on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Our very special guest in the first hour is our regular contributor, Mr. Ernest Krim III. Ernest is an Emmy-nominated producer, a public teacher. He has created content for companies such as HBO, Hulu, Disney, Paramount, and the History Channel. In addition, he is the CEO of Krim's Cultural Consulting, LLC, an international speaker who's spoken at Harvard, the University of Chicago, Microsoft, and Colin Kaepernick's Know Your Rights camp. Ernest, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Well, thanks again for having me, brother.
Ernest, let's unpack for a moment that moment where you had to make a decision. Obviously, you're standing in the presence of your wife. Your manhood is, if you will, and I wasn't there, but I assume it's being challenged, and therefore pride kind of steps forward. You want to respond, right? And in Los Angeles, and soon in the city of Chicago, we could be looking at hundreds of these incidents, maybe even thousands of these incidents, including confrontations based upon the march across Wabash Boulevard just yesterday. Tens of thousands of people showed up. And the prepositioning of troops here in the city of Chicago in anticipation of Mexican American Heritage Day and other Hispanic related celebrations could lead to confrontations on a scale that we've never seen before, which could literally be thousands of incidents per day in the city of Chicago that could lead to, as you well know, unrest and catastrophic results. But in that moment, you handled it differently. You say Black history saved your life. Help us, Ernest.
Yeah, this is unfortunately, this is something that I think will forever be relevant, forever be relevant in America. And I preface this by saying that, like I said prior to the break, before this situation happened, I was not a public speaker, public teacher. I was not an author. I was not someone who did anything publicly. I was an educator and I was a mentor within that school building. I always believed and thought I had something to share relative to our history, but I kept that contained to the classroom. And I preface this by saying that because I want everybody that's listening that has never had something traumatic happen to them to understand that you don't have to wait. You should not wait until something personally happens to you until you are provoked to step up or speak up, depending on what your strength is in this fight. Because I'm ashamed to say that I should have been doing it beforehand. But the negative self-talk that I had about myself told me that I did not have anything to give. Now, teaching is something to give, but the inspiration that led to me to teach was something that truly should have always been expanded beyond the classroom. But I did not think that I had something worthy of giving.
Ernest,
So, yes.
help our listeners, and I did mean to interrupt you, help our listeners understand the difference. First of all, what is self-talk? Secondly, negative self-talk versus positive self-talk. Help break that down for us. Unpack that for us.
Yeah, scientists will say, brother, that we have hundreds of thousands of thoughts a day. A vast majority are repetitive thoughts. A vast majority are negative as a defensive mechanism. We have negative thoughts. We think of the worst situation by nature as a way to defend us against potential harm. And this is something that helped save us as we have mostly lived in spaces where we could have had our safety at risk, whether it be an animal or an attacking group or whatever. Now that we live in societies where the biggest threat may be, for some folks, might be stubbing your toe on the edge of your bed. The biggest threat, the biggest stressful situation might be you and your significant other trying to figure out what to eat, right? So, but the thought process is still that we have defensive mechanisms that still think of the worst case scenario. So we have to constantly counter that with positive thoughts or trained, calculated optimism. So for me, when I saw people, let's say for like you, for example, when I was in school or teaching, or your father or so many great leaders, I would look at that and say that what they're doing is amazing, but I could never see myself doing that because how,
So negative self-talk can keep us from engaging in the march or engaging in the movement or speaking up against injustice because we've convinced ourselves that our voices don't matter.
Exactly. And we think we have to be perfect. That's one thing. We think that we have to be able to have a written, I'm saying this metaphorically because not everybody's going to speak, but we feel like we have to have a pre-written speech that's perfectly fine-tuned. We think we have to be these perfect figures because what we've been miseducated with is the image of perfection from our leaders. Again, we use Dr. King a lot, but just the image of him and Malcolm X with the suit and tie. We think we have to be refined that way, but we don't think of some of our leaders, let's say of like a Robert Williams in the South, who was you see with overalls oftentimes, or you would see our sister, and I think Georgia Gilmore in Memphis. I'm sorry, in Alabama in the 1950s, who's selling meals to help fund the Montgomery bus boycott. Just a regular woman in this fight. We have to realize that we all play a role, and the movements are successful because of all of our participation. So going up to that situation, leading up to that, I had this treasure trove of information, ideas, these conversations I was having behind the scenes. And then when it happened, it was like a spark was lit, because everything that I am right now, I already was, but I wasn't inspired, motivated, and I did not have the self-belief enough in myself to think that I could do it. And that's when everything just came out. And here I am, a little more than 9 years later, still talking about this. So, of course, y'all know I'm a history teacher, so I give context every time. When this situation happens, this is not something where I say, you know what, this is exactly what I'm going to do if this happens to me. I had seen the videos, I had studied things. I felt comfortable. We were at a majority Black event at the South Shore Cultural Center, but I also understood that in that time, Trump was on the rise. We didn't think he would win, but he was still influencing folks. We knew what happened to Alton Sterling that summer. We knew what happened to Philando Castile. We knew what happened to Mike Brown, for example, Sandra Bland, for example, Rekia Boyd. So although I didn't feel like that can happen there, I was still heightened and my awareness was there. We did something simple. Grab a beanbag we thought someone was done using. Black people, we have to realize that every move we make in society is politicized. That's why we're here. There is no such thing as nothing being political or not being interested in politics. Your existence, your labeling is political. She's in a majority Black event, but still felt she had the protection to chastise us and ridicule us verbally because we grabbed something we thought she was done using. Why am I not ready at that point to fist fight? Well, for one, it's going to take a lot, even the word, to provoke me to fight you. Because, and I'll start my book with this. If you don't know who you are, anybody can name you. If anybody can name you, you're answer to anything. It's not that it did not make me mad, but I understand what you're doing. You're attempting to provoke me. That word has so much power because of the history of it. So we have to begin to think too that can ask ourselves this. Can any white person say that word at any time and trigger the emotional response they want from us? And if that's the case, what will that do to us? What does that do to us? And I'm not saying that it's not worthy of a physical response. I'm just saying that we have to begin to think these things through. That wasn't the first time.
My dad says if they can define you, they can confine you.
Yes.
That is, if Donald Trump can say that we are born criminals, then when these Alabama boys and these Texas boys come up here, sent from their governors to patrol the streets of Chicago, there's now evidence coming out from the DC National Guard presence that they are not just assisting immigration, custom, and federal law enforcement in the district. They are also actively engaging in policing themselves, which obviously is against the law. But engaging them, even after the fact, does not deal with the moment and the tragedy of the moment. And when you talk about self-affirmation, I keep thinking about my dad at this stage of his life. When he says, I am somebody, and asks an audience to repeat back to him, repeat after me, I am somebody, it's to overcome the negative affirmation of I am nobody, to overcome the self-talk that I don't matter. And if Jesse Jackson can get 500 people to say, I am somebody, I'm God's child, respect me, protect me, never neglect me, man, he can walk out of that church and you will walk right down the middle of King Drive or the Dan Ryan or Lakeshore Drive and hold up traffic if you believe it. So Dad, in this moment, Ernest, you've shown me that Dad wasn't just engaging in a litany. He was challenging our negative self-talk.
You have no idea how often I've referenced your father in regards to that, because that was played in my house growing up. How did I know about that? growing up. I wasn't bombarded with, we didn't have social media. Like, this was something that my parents exposed me to. I knew of that saying so much, and my parents affirmed me so much that and I had the self-belief. But even then, think about that. Even though I was bombarded with that as a child, I still had limitations. And we have to realize that our parents affirming us cannot be enough, because then we go to school and the school curriculum does not affirm us. See, a lot of people were focused on the N word in that instance, which is a violent word, but I wanted to awaken people to the entire system that treats us like the N word. Because if we want to fight when somebody calls us that word literally, what does it mean what does it mean when we are then immersed in a society that treats us like that perpetually? Why aren't we then literally or figuratively fighting that? So when you come in with the mindset of I am somebody, that foundationally then lets you know that if I am somebody and you're treating me like I'm not somebody, then I have to counter that by any means. And the fact that not everybody is awoken to that yet right now in 2025, despite what we're seeing, lets me know that your father's words are still very relevant to this moment right now.
I'm sitting here saying to myself theologically that we have a right to stand up to empire. I mean, we have a right, not only because the First Amendment says so, that's 1791, but since the inception of our very humanity, dating as far back as when our DNA was first implanted to some generation thousands of years ago, we were born with this inherent right to fight against injustice and to fight for justice. And overcoming that moment where when we see federal troops on our street, they represent empire, they represent Rome. And depending upon in that moment, we react, our response to the empire's force really speaks to the character of who we are, or what Howard Thurman would say, what does the religion of Jesus say to a people whose backs are against the wall? You do not have Humvees, you do not have M60s, you do not have high-powered machine guns and rifles, but you will be looking, quite frankly, at your neighbor, many of whom are people who live in our communities just like we do. The National Guard are right next door to all of our homes, called into service. But then there's also this dynamic of the heightened sensitivity that Donald Trump brings to the racial equation, that he's coming to Chicago promising a Chicago apocalypse or something he posted on social media the other day. I'm going to talk with Terry Hort Owens in the next hour about the spirit energy that flows from the president of the United States and how it sets the stage for the nation's behavior. You've experienced that yourself, didn't you, in 2016, Ernest?
Definitely. I believe that situation was inspired on her behalf because of him. Because when you can have a person that's at that time running for president constantly make remarks about hitting people, making sure he doesn't say this or do this, or call Kaepernick when he's protesting an SOB, then what does that mean for the regular everyday person? There's this belief that we are stepping out of bounds when we assert ourselves and our humanity. And I think that's what happened in that situation. If people have seen this video and they know about me, you'll see that the black folks who she was there with were acting in some ways as a barricade of protection, which is even more troubling. But the lesson I get from that, and 9 years later, I still reflect on it a lot, is the understanding that not everybody that looks like me is for me. And we know the popular saying, all skin folk ain't kinfolk. We see it time and time again in the Supreme Court, for example, sometimes for example. So we have to understand what that means, and then metaphorically what that represents. How many of us in that instance are playing the role of the protectors of the empire, of the system? Literally, she's making excuses, the black friend. She doesn't mean that. It doesn't hurt us. It doesn't bother us. How many of us are saying the same thing when this happens to those who look like us, maybe in a different neighborhood?
Ernest, you have that video is on YouTube, correct? Of the incident?
Yes.
How can we find it very quickly?
You can find it by if you know what, if you go to my Instagram page, Mr. Krim 3 on Instagram, you'll see that video as a part of a book ad tagged at the very top.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to Ernest Krim on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Today, we're moving mountains. When we come forward, more with Ernest Krim III.
The biggest names, the best conversations. You're riding with Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Black New York City Mayor Eric Adams is avoiding questions about the mayoral race after vowing not to drop out.
Next question.
Mr. Mayor. Reports say President Trump wants him and Curtis Lewa to step aside for Andrew Cuomo against frontrunners Ram Mamdani. Rapper Young Thug is apologizing to his partner Mariah the Scientist after leaked jail calls revealed he was unfaithful. The rapper admitted this mistake in a post on X, saying he'll do anything to save their relationship. Mariah has not publicly responded, leaving their current status unclear. And the Los Angeles Police Department is no longer providing security for former Vice President Kamala Harris. Officers had been assigned to her after President Trump revoked her Secret Service protection, but the move drew backlash. Critics say police were diverted from crime suppression, and the police union argued Harris, who's a millionaire, could pay for private security herself. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Still got those annoying mosquitoes, ants, crickets, and creepy spiders? Get them out for good. Call legendary Dewey Pest and Termite Control. Family run since 1929. Get a free inspection and evaluation at DeweyPest.com. That's DeweyPest.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The NFL will close the first week of the regular season with a diversity milestone that should go in the NFL record books. 16 of the 32 NFL teams had a black quarterback in their starting lineup. That's the highest number of black quarterbacks starting a season, number one on the depth chart. One of those 16 is former USC quarterback Caleb Williams. You will see Williams leading the Chicago Bears against Minnesota in tonight's Monday Night Football game. The other 15, Spencer Rattler of New Orleans, Kyler Murray of Arizona, Dak Prescott of Dallas, Lamar Jackson of Baltimore, Patrick Mahomes of Kansas City, Jalen Hurts of Philadelphia, Geno Smith of the Las Vegas Raiders, Russell Wilson of the New York Giants, Justin Fields of the New York Jets, Michael Penix of Atlanta, Jordan Love of Green Bay, rookie Cam Ward of Tennessee, and Bryce Young of Carolina. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Are you ready to be a part of the conversation that will help shape our nation's future? Get ready to join us for the Left Coast Forum, Saturday, October 25th at LA Trade Tech, where progressive voices will come together to tackle the issues that matter most to working families across Los Angeles and beyond. From economic justice to climate action, from healthcare to housing, we're bringing together the brightest minds and most passionate advocates for real solutions and real change. With workshops, 2 major keynote addresses, and a closing reception with great music and good food. It's the Left Coast Forum, where your voice matters and your ideas take action. Saturday, October 25th at LA Trade Tech. Brought to you by KBLA Talk 1580 and the LA Progressive. The future won't wait, and neither should you. Mark your calendar now to be there and be heard. Stay tuned to KBLA Talk 1580 for more details.
During this time, it's important for everyone to know your rights. The 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendments in the U.S. Constitution protects every one of us, regardless of immigration status. The 4th Amendment requires a judicial warrant to search your home. The 5th protects your right to remain silent, and the 6th gives you the right to an attorney. Just remember, no warrant, no key, my privacy. You don't have to speak. No lawyer inside. Don't say a thing. Yeah, we all got rights.
Hey, we all got rights. Let's go.
You're still glowing, flirting, grooving. You still got it. But your immune system weakens as you age. making it harder to fight flu, pneumococcal pneumonia, RSV, and COVID-19. Vaccines are a key part of any health routine and help strengthen your immune response. Ask your doctor or pharmacist which vaccines you need. Schedule in minutes at vaxassist.com. Sponsored by Pfizer.
There's nothing like when you get that part from eBay and it just fits. Yeah, the first time. So you can do less of this and get right back to more of this. At eBay, you'll find all the parts you need, guaranteed to fit, at prices you'll love. Sounds good, doesn't it? eBay, things people love. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, aka the Voice of Reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the Voice of Reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. It's Moving Mountain Mondays on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. In this hour, our guest and regular contributor on Mondays is Ernest Krim III. Ernest is and was a school teacher. He is an anti-racist advocate, and he's also sharing some insights on how to handle confrontation. And in that moment, the entire world is in your hands based upon the decisions that you make. He says that history saved his life. You know, I think before I come to you with the next question, Ernest, I do want to make this point to all within range of our voices. What we saw in Los Angeles is fundamentally different than what is taking place in the rest of the country. I was there. I stayed at the Line Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. I saw the National Guard presence about 1 square miles around the federal buildings and federal properties, and the occasional dart out beyond that perimeter to certain parks trying to enforce customs. And now that the courts appear to be on the side of the President of the United States, Los Angeles itself may begin to feel some of what Chicago is going to start out with. But when he came to Los Angeles, he did not come to Los Angeles to do what? Solve the crime problem. He came to Los Angeles to enforce custom law. He's coming to Chicago to enforce custom law, listen carefully now, and to solve the crime problem. This new narrative, this new mandate he wants to apply to Baltimore is applying to Washington, D.C., is willing to apply to New Orleans, Louisiana, under the guise of customs enforcement. I'm telling y'all, I sure wish Barbara Arnwine was here. Look, people, he's coming to whoop some people's behinds. Do you hear me? He's coming to engage in an extracurricular constitutional activity. And in that moment, I think it is Viktor Frankl who says that when we are confronted with a stimulus, that is, we don't control the external force that makes us behave the way we might react. But when we acknowledge that there could be a trigger, a stimulus, that what we do control is our response. And in our response, it will determine our freedom, or it will determine our incarceration? Your thoughts, Brother
First
Cliff?
off, my first thought is I need to reread his book because that book was life-changing for me, Viktor Frankl's book. But also, too, I think that in this moment, I was doing some writing before we got on this radio show, and I was just reflecting upon just how important it is for us to realize that as he's waging war against us, as he's dehumanizing us at rallies, he's also censoring and banning our history. I need us to make that connection. He is sending troops, and of equal or of more importance to him is to be concerned about what's being taught to our kids. He's defunding PBS and possibly putting money in PragerU and sending troops to wage war. This is a psychological, this is a mental thing. When that situation happens to me in 2016, I'm aware that this isn't just about me. And it's happening. I'm sorry, but I can never be surprised that a white person is practicing overt racism. I've studied too much. That moment does not shock me. The only thing about the moment that shocked me is the fact that maybe a part of me believed that because I carried myself a certain way, that it wouldn't directly happen to me in that manner. But it's par for the course, unless white folks are doing the proper, going through the proper steps to relearn how they've been miseducated. See, when you understand that you are carrying the weight, the burden, the successes of your ancestors, because we know that when we talk about what our ancestors have left with us, it's not just the trauma, but it's also the resilience and the brilliance. I realize that I'm existing in a moment that 50 years priorly would have just been another moment. That honestly could have been a moment that led to my death. Again, like you said, Emmett Till, I'm from Chicago. I understand. And that white woman who created the environment for him to be lynched could have still been prosecuted before she died a couple years ago. It's mind-boggling, right? I understand that this is a bait to me. I understand that if I reacted physically, yeah, I would have been like justified, but I also might not be here anymore.
And you had the pride of your woman there with you, which could have only exacerbated things because, you know, without that restraint, right? Your manhood shows up, and it's like, you know what? Somebody's about to learn something good today.
Exactly.
Sorry.
No, I'm
sorry.
sorry.
Can I pivot for just a moment? Because
Yeah,
I
go ahead.
want to make sure this makes it to the news. I know you do regular social media outreach and communications around the city of Chicago, around the country when you visit these very historical places. But this week, or maybe just a week or so ago, when I was watching social media and saw some of your viral activity, you bumped into the governor of the state of Illinois. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So again, that's something that's, I guess, a result of my reframing of who I am. Having gone through that traumatic experience, I resolved that because I know I personally, as an individual, cannot prevent that from happening to somebody, but I can equip as many of us as I can with self-love and knowledge to know how we can fight beyond just using our hands, because we know how to do that, right? That was always the issue when I was teaching, trying to get our kids to understand what's really worth fighting for. But I've been so committed to that I've been able to make connections with some brilliant people like yourself, brother, like yourself. And, I got a chance to connect with some folks who knew him and saw what I was doing, and they wanted to set it up because they understood the importance of getting out. Pritzker's very important stance. I'm very critical of politicians, but I do have to say that I love the way he's been handling this. And I want to talk to him about some of the things that he was doing, but also, too, the very important role that reinvesting in social services plays in this and reframing what violence prevention looks like, which I'm in agreement with him because his predecessor, Republican Governor Bruce Rauner, when he became the governor of Illinois, he was defunding programs. See, we always talk about the hoopla around defunding the police and how people were so offended, but Republicans have been committed to defunding social programs since social programs have existed. So that was a very enlightening conversation. But I will tell you that the most enlightening thing that I got from that 15-minute conversation, and I haven't posted this part yet, is when I asked him how he was doing.
Mm.
You know, and I'm a teacher. I would always check in with my students. And he told me on a scale from 1 to 10, he is a 4. And I believe that that's being generous. This is a very trying time.
I was going to ask you that question, that it seems that this moment is so unique that by saying he's a 4, that's not a very political statement, because of course he wants to come off like all of us do as tough, but he was honest.
Yes. And I'm of the belief, honestly, if you give me a 4 publicly, I think you're probably a 2.
Yeah.
Because you're grappling with it in your head. Right? This is a white guy that is actively, as a billionaire, fighting against another billionaire who fits the same, racial background as him. If he's stressed, imagine how we feel.
Ernest, I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. We're on KBLA Talk 1580. When we come forward, more with Ernest Krim III.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
You have cancer. The 3 words no one wants to hear. Of the cancers that impact our community, lung cancer is the most dangerous. More people succumb to lung cancer than colon, breast, and prostate combined. Black men are 12% more likely to develop lung cancer, and cases for Black women are rising. Early detection and comprehensive treatment is the best way to beat this dreaded disease. Providence is a research leader in multi-cancer early detection, offering blood tests that identify fast-spreading cancers that don't show symptoms in early stages. The Providence Los Angeles Integrated Network Cancer Program determines best protocols for each patient, interacting with specialists who share experiences, perspectives, and new findings specific to each case. With over 1,000 board-certified physicians, including top oncologists, surgeons, radiologists, and nurse specialists, Providence delivers whole-person care that understands your culture, values, preferences, and priorities. So, if you hear the words, "you have cancer," all you need is faith and providence.org/cancer.
During this time, it's important for everyone to know your rights. The 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendments in the U.S. Constitution protects every one of us, regardless of immigration status. The 4th Amendment requires a judicial warrant to search your home. The 5th protects your right to remain silent, and the 6th gives you the right to an attorney. Just remember,
no warrant, no key, my privacy. You don't have to speak. No lawyer inside. Don't say a thing. Yeah, we all got rights.
Hey, we all got rights.
Are you ready to be a part of the conversation that will help shape our nation's future? Get ready to join us for the Left Coast Forum, Saturday, October 25th at LA Trade Tech, where progressive voices will come together to tackle the issues that matter most to working families across Los Angeles and beyond. From economic justice to climate action, from healthcare to housing, we're bringing together the brightest minds and most passionate advocates for real solutions and real change. With workshops, 2 major keynote addresses, and a closing reception with great music and good food. It's the Left Coast Forum, where your voice matters and your ideas take action. Saturday, October 25th at LA Trade Tech. Brought to you by KBLA Talk 1580 and the LA Progressive. The future won't wait, and neither should you. Mark your calendar now to be there and be heard. Stay tuned to KBLA Talk 1580 for more details.
Wesley Financial Group is not a law firm.
Hi, I'm Chuck McDowell, the timeshare cancellation guy. In 2011, I founded Wesley Financial Group with one goal in mind: to help honest folks out of their timeshares permanently. Today, I run Wesley with my 2 sons, a real family business, treating every client and every employee like we'd want our own family treated. That philosophy has helped us grow into the largest, most trusted timeshare cancellation company in the United States. Fortune magazine even recognized us as one of the best places to work. Why? Because we genuinely care. In fact, some of our former clients were so moved by their experience working with us, they joined our team so they could help others to timeshare freedom. If you're stuck in a timeshare, give us a call. Let our family help your family.
Call Wesley now for your free timeshare exit kit. 800-687-7979. That's 800-687-7979. 800-687-7979.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Jesse Jr. Welcome to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. In the next hour, Reverend Teresa Hord Owens, the General Minister and President of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ in the United States and Canada, will be our host in just a few short moments. I know there are many of you who can't wait to hear that show, and I have some challenging questions about challenging empire for the General Minister and President of the Christian Church today, because that's exactly what we're looking at here in the city of Chicago. But in this hour, in our final segment, is none other than Ernest Krim III. Ernest, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thanks again for having me, brother.
Ernest, just before we came forward and before the commercial break, you were sharing with us your encounter with the governor of the state of Illinois. And I must say that I'm particularly impressed with Gavin Newsom and the governor of California and J.B. Pritzker's willingness to stand up and find every conceivable method of fighting back, no longer playing tiddlywinks with Donald Trump, but they're bringing it and they're giving all that they got.
Yes, sir. And I think what we're seeing here kind of goes back to the point of my book and my experience. I spent my life growing up on the South Side fighting. Luckily, I got it all out of my system by the time I was a teenager. But one of the things I've realized as an adult, of course, you can't handle things like that. There's a thing you realize when you fight in school, or maybe just even in your neighborhood as a kid, like you might get suspended, you might get in trouble with your parents. But when you become an adult, there are consequences and repercussions that come with it. And there's a lot more in that.
Not consequences and repercussions.
Consequences and repercussions.
That's white. That's white's only pie right there.
and when I was a teacher, man, like the two main issues I had with my students, particularly of our background, was cell phone usage and fighting. Because I would have to always address what, because most time, and I taught for most of my career at a mixed school, but most of the fighting was us. So I need to model to people, we know how to fight with our fists. We know that because our parents, like I grew up in the household where if I came back inside as a kid and said somebody did this to me, I was told to go back out and handle it. I know how to handle that. Part of being a man and an adult is also understanding your strength, because if you understand your strength and what you are capable of, you will not unleash that just on anybody. My life is not at risk, so I don't want to risk my life dealing with a situation like that because I know what I'm capable of doing. We need more people who model how to fight beyond your fists. The fight lasts for a moment. Mike Tyson's still fighting for money. You see what I'm saying? Pritzker and Newsom, from what I'm seeing, are modeling how we can strategically fight beyond that. The leaders from the 50s and 60s and beyond were modeling how we fight beyond that. Before we got on this radio show, I saw that the House reps in the state of Missouri were staging a sit-in to counter the gerrymander, right? We have to teach our kids how to fight beyond their fists. They know how to fight. They know how to hoop. They know how to play football. But we have to make sure they know that we are more than that. And that can only be taught by reminding them of who they are, by teaching them our history constantly.
Of course, you were referencing the 5th Congressional District of Missouri, the congressional district occupied presently by Congressman Emanuel Cleaver, who in the last segment, the last 3 hours of our show, played a very important role in Tavis Smiley's dialogue with Emanuel Cleaver about what this represents, and that subsequently led to a different kind of confrontation with legislators and in the legislature of Missouri. I thank you for referencing that. I wanted to ask you this this question about this moment. Johnny Mack comes on our program on Thursdays, and he says that we are all in time. That is, we weren't born 500 years ago. We weren't born in the 50s. Some of us weren't born in the mid 60s. We're in time. We were born in time for what we are confronting. But as a historian, Dr. Krim, Brother Krim, it's overtime. It is the knowledge of all of that history that you bring to the present that informs your judgment. And in this moment, knowing that we're coming to the end of our show in about 6 or 7 minutes, share with us what it means for a new generation to recognize that they are not here by accident, but they are here in time, just in time to do their thing.
Yes, indeed. I think that first comes with a solid spiritual foundation. I think that you have to understand that you are something beyond this human experience that we are having. You know, that we are from, in my belief, we are from the Creator. We are from God. Like we are here for just a moment, which means that for me, it has to be for a reason. But I'm also, as this person here, I'm a spiritual being having a human experience, and I'm an amalgamation of everybody that came before me. Literally, I am my ancestors. So all the things that have happened priorly impact me because we know that that trauma can be passed down, just like I said before, and also that resilience and that brilliance. So we have to understand that first and foremost. And I'll tell you this, the first title of my book, before I called it How Black History Can Save Your Life, it was going to be the Bible verse that alludes to, and forgive me, Rev Owens, I'm forgetting it right now, but it said that it ended with, and who knows, you were here for such a time as this. That was going to be the first title, For Such a Time as This, and I might use it later. We'll see. But I was going to call it that because when all of that happened, I felt prepared because of all the studying I did, all the information I had. We cannot start our memory with the year we were born. I was born in the 80s. I can't start my history with what was going on just with Harold Washington or Ronald Reagan or the first George Bush, because then I'm losing context. If I start with George Bush, I'm going to see how he tried to perpetuate this myth of Black criminality. Then I buy into that. I have to begin to ask the question, why? That's the thing that drives me. I know I don't know everything, but I'm willing to critique and criticize and ask why of everything, which leads me down these rabbit holes to make these connections. Without this historical foundation, we are people who are born on a moving train without any understanding of where we're going. And we're just sitting down comfortably on this moving train that's headed towards a cliff, not understanding that we have the ability to position ourselves to the front, to take control together and reroute that train. That can only come when you know you have the audacity to do things based on your spiritual foundation and based on what you've studied and what you have seen. We were created for such a time of this because we could not have existed with this understanding and consciousness in any other time.
That's say that one more time, Ernest.
I don't know if I can, but I'm trying.
You said, let me help you. You said we were created for such a time as this, and we weren't born in any other time because it was not our time.
Yes, indeed. And that's why I love technology, because we can run it back and get the exact quote the way we want it.
Ernest, how's your family, and how did they handle that incident? We only have a couple more minutes, but how did you move them through that part of the process?
I have a very, very close family, including, of course, my wife and my kids. I had two at the time. They were very young, so they didn't understand what was going on. The family I grew up with, of course, my mom, dad, and my sister, they were ready to ride, for lack of a better word. They know how I was, and they couldn't believe that was how I responded. So I think they were shocked for a while, but then when they saw how I approached it after, I think even now they are still somewhat in awe to see how I was able to use that as motivation to get to this point. It's a desire. It's a burning desire for people to have the same the same desire I had after I found out about who I was in college more in depth. And the same desire to want to push and fight, not just for myself. I fought for justice for myself so that I could model how I could do it for others. That's all. That's all. So my family is great now. They are very supportive, but they also are collectively doing, things to help push us forward in their neighborhoods, in our families, the ways in which we get together and gather as a community. I think all of that is so important. And I want you all that are listening to encourage that person in your life that you might not think, if you don't think it's you, that is having that negative self-talk that has the potential to speak up and do the things that we need collectively. Because as your father once brilliantly said, I am somebody, which means that we are collectively somebody.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Our very special guest in this hour has been none other than Ernest Krim. He is a mass educator, he is a historian, and he is an extraordinary contributor to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. When we come forward, Teresa Hord Owens is our very special guest on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Amber Payton with BIA. Mayor Eric Adams is avoiding questions about the mayoral race after vowing not to drop out.
Next question.
Mr. Mayor. Reports say President Trump wants him and Curtis Sliwa to step aside for Andrew Cuomo against frontrunners Ram Mamdani. Rapper Young Thug is apologizing to his partner Mariah the Scientist after leaked jail calls revealed he was unfaithful. The rapper admitted this mistake in a post on X, saying he'll do anything to save their relationship. Mariah has not publicly responded, leaving their current status unclear. And the Los Angeles Police Department is no longer providing security for former Vice President Kamala Harris. Officers had been assigned to her after President Trump revoked her Secret Service protection, but the move drew backlash. Critics say police were diverted from crime suppression, and the police union argued Harris, who's a millionaire, could pay for private security herself. Get BIN News now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Still got those annoying mosquitoes, ants, crickets, and creepy spiders? Get them out for good. Call legendary Dewey Pest and Termite Control. Family run since 1929. Get a free inspection and evaluation at DeweyPest.com. That's DeweyPest.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The NFL will close the first week of the regular season with a diversity milestone that should go in the NFL record books. 16 of the 32 NFL teams had a black quarterback in their starting lineup. That's the highest number of black quarterbacks starting a season, number one on the depth chart. One of those 16 is former USC quarterback Caleb Williams. You will see Williams leading the Chicago Bears against Minnesota in tonight's Monday Night Football game. The other 15, Spencer Rattler of New Orleans, Kyler Murray of Arizona, Dak Prescott of Dallas, Lamar Jackson of Baltimore, Patrick Mahomes of Kansas City, Jalen Hurts of Philadelphia, Geno Smith of the Las Vegas Raiders, Russell Wilson of the New York Giants, Justin Fields of the New York Jets, Michael Penix of Atlanta, Jordan Love of Green Bay, rookie Cam Ward of Tennessee, and Bryce Young of Carolina. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Are you ready to be a part of the conversation that will help shape our nation's future? Get ready to join us for the Left Coast Forum, Saturday, October 25th at LA Trade Tech, where progressive voices will come together to tackle the issues that matter most to working families across Los Angeles and beyond. From economic justice to climate action, from healthcare to housing, we're bringing together the brightest minds and most passionate advocates for real solutions and real change. With workshops, 2 major keynote addresses, and a closing reception with great music and good food. It's the Left Coast Forum, where your voice matters and your ideas take action. Saturday, October 25th at LA Trade Tech. Brought to you by KBLA Talk 1580 and the LA Progressive. The future won't wait, and neither should you. Mark your calendar now to be there and be heard. Stay tuned to KBLA Talk 1580 for more details.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. Reverend Terry Hord Owens is the General Minister and President of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ in the United States and Canada. She is the first person of color and second woman to lead the denomination, and the first woman of African descent to lead a mainline denomination in the United States. She earned her bachelor's degree from Harvard University and her MDiv from the University of Chicago Divinity School, where she subsequently served as Dean of Students for 12 years. Reverend Hord Owens Resume includes 20 years of leadership in corporate America, leading diverse teams in data management. She serves on the National Council of Churches as the treasurer of the governing board and as a member of the World Council of Churches Central Committee. Dr. Owens, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, Madam President.
Oh, thank you, my friend. It's always good to be here with you today.
It certainly is an honor to have you.
Yeah.
And moving Mountain Mondays, we simply wouldn't be able to move them without you. So let me present you with the largest mountain, that Los Angeles, whose mission creep is now moving from just ICE enforcement to looking at communities where there might be high crime rates. Obviously, the city of Chicago is now the recipient of the new mission creep, moving beyond immigration and custom enforcement to the idea of solving Chicago's crime problem. And we've seen this mission creep, which started in Washington, D.C., moved to Los Angeles. Now the president of the United States is talking about expanding it to Baltimore, Maryland, and to New Orleans, Louisiana, these cities with Black mayors. And I'm wondering, what does our faith share with us with our backs against the wall? And how should we view the confrontation with empire?
There are so many examples of, particularly in the Old Testament, the people of Israel. One of my Hebrew Bible professors always said that you have to look at the Old Testament as a story of the Jewish people and their God, and how God has continually delivered them and brought them. And as Christians, we see that history as a model for how we ourselves can engage resistance. As you know, Black people heard those stories of liberation and resistance and embraced them, and our own struggles from the times of slavery to through the civil rights movement. But you mentioned earlier in your segment with Ernest about the Roman occupation during the
first century.
First century. Well, really, I think it's not quite 100 years even before Christ when it began. And that occupation was mirrors a lot of what we're seeing today. It was not only the visible presence of soldiers and a strong military. The military could take you, your family, enter your home, take whatever they needed to. They called it being pressed into service. You lived in fear every single day that at some point the empire could come and take what you had. There were client kings who were established, often Jewish people who were, almost like overseers on the plantation, who represented the empire and had the appearance of some level of authority, but were still accountable to the empire. One of the things that we don't talk a lot about when we study the Bible are all the revolts that happened. The Jewish people, particularly 100, 120, 130 years or so after Jesus's death in 33 AD, there was a series of revolts, one of which leads to the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. But the Jewish people continued to resist. And even down through the creation of the state of Israel in 1948, you have the Arabs coming in to take over that land, the Turks, it's going back and forth, the Jews, the Arabs, the Turks. There's all kind of war, but the idea of resisting continues. I think personally what has happened with the nation of Israel is that even today is that they no longer understand this as something that is grounded in their faith. It's a civil situation to them that God has established this country for them, but they are not, at least not by their actions, still being obedient to the law of God, to love God and love neighbor and to honor humanity. It was that kind of disobedience that the prophets spoke of as creating havoc for them before. I'm not saying that, they brought this condemnation upon themselves, but it's certainly not in line with the teachings of the God that they indicate. And then you have real examples, like when Ernest mentioned Esther. Esther's not just a shy, pretty girl who gets the king's eye. Esther's very smart, even after she's, Queen Vashti, that story. Vashti refuses to just come at the king's beckoning. And for a woman to refuse to do that in that time, she was banished from the court. But Esther is told, look, this is your opportunity to do what you need to do for your people. But if you choose not to, God's still going to deliver Israel. He'll just have to use other people. Salvation will come, and may come through another route. But Esther waits a year. She prepares herself for 1 year before she goes in to see the king. That line that we always quote, I'm going to see the king. She goes through a series of preparation, mentally, physically, emotionally. She has a plan before she helps to destroy the empire, and before she goes in to see the empire.
Madam
She
President?
doesn't just rush in. She has a plan. She's thought it through.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. Our very special guest in this hour is the General Minister and President of the Disciples of Christ. When we come forward, more with Teresa Hord Owens for such a time as this.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
With 5 ultra-thin blades, a built-in exfoliating bar, a precision trimmer on the back for sharp lineups, Gillette Labs delivers that smooth shave. Plus, and check this out, with 1 refill, you'll get up to 30 shaves. And on average, the blades last 50% longer than Gillette Fusion. Got something special coming up and you gotta look good? Check out Gillette Labs, the best a man could get. Gillette Labs also available in heated.
You know that Big Bargain detergent jug is 80% water, right? It doesn't clean as well.
80% water? I thought I was getting a better deal because it's so big.
If you want a better clean, Tide Pods are only 12% water. The rest is pure concentrated cleaning ingredients.
Oh, let me make an announcement.
Attention shoppers, if you want a real deal, try Tide Pods.
Stop paying for watered-down detergents. Pay for clean. If it's got to be clean, it's got to be Tide Pods. Water content based on the leading bargain liquid detergent.
With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Dr. Nicolai Corte. Let's preserve Black land stories before they're lost forever. I want to personally invite you to be a part of something historic. As journalist in residence for the Black Land Lost Narrative Archive Project, I've joined forces with powerhouse attorney and social justice champion George Fothery, the man who helped make history by delivering justice to the Bruce family in Manhattan Beach, securing the first known return of land unjustly taken from Black owners by a local government. That victory was monumental, but it was just the beginning. For generations, Black families have acquired land through grit, faith, and determination, only to lose it through violence, legal loopholes, forced sales, and systematic racism. What's been taken goes far beyond dirt and deeds. It's the erasure of wealth, identity, and legacy. That's why we've launched the Black Land Lost Narrative Archive Project, a national effort to collect, protect, and preserve the stories of Black land lost before they're buried, forgotten, or erased altogether. Because there's power in telling Black stories, there is resistance in remembering, and there's justice in being seen and heard. This is where you come in. We're inviting you to be a part of this historic Black narrative archive. If you or someone you know has experienced land loss, displays in this archive, your truth matters not just to your family, but to our collective land loss, displacement, or forced property sales. You're not in whispers, but on the record. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Dr. Nicolai Corte, and as always, we welcome your feedback.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. The General Minister and President of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ in the United States and Canada is our very special guest on Moving Mountain Mondays, and we're counting on her to help us move a mountain.
My faith says I need more than myself to do that. So,
amen. A pretty big mountain's coming our way. How we engage some of our neighbors who will soon be wearing National Guard uniforms. Men and women, some of our warriors, if you will, who have secured our nation in foreign battlefields will be potentially walking the streets of our cities. This is not something, I repeat, that every American is going to experience. There's this amazing movie called Civil War. And the Civil War is isolated in certain political areas where there is obviously armed conflict. But then in other areas, as these reporters and goodwill people navigate through these difficult areas, they get to certain little towns and they're like, oh, well, we have no idea what the hell's going on up there. We ain't got nothing to do with us. Ain't no civil war here. And they're just going about business as usual. And so it's like, it's almost as if the Confederacy has now seized Washington, and now they're bringing the war to the areas where the descendants of the freed men are. They're challenging the constitutionality of everything. The Constitution is as battered as our flag was at Gettysburg. All kinds of bullet fire through it and cannon fire through it, and maybe even Bunker Hill. It just seems to me that well, the whole world, in a real sense, Madam President, is upside down, and so we're being called to find a way to honor our faith at its highest levels, but also to stand up and to say no and to resist. I want to resist as much as I possibly can every day, but I'm afraid that I'm gonna have to call Tavis one day and say, listen, man, I need bond, man. I can't get out of here to be on radio on time. Talk to me. Talk to me, Madam President.
You know, this is I think the perennial, I don't know if we call it a conflict or difficulty that faith leaders, be they Christian, Muslim, or Jewish, have in terms of the role of faith in the public square. We have laws that keep churches or religious institutions who have a tax-exempt status from formally endorsing candidates or contributing money to candidates. Churches can't do that kind of thing. They have to be careful about how their resources are used for that kind of work. But what they do have is the moral authority to stand before the nation. And the argument, we were created as a Christian nation, is the argument that's been used to fight against every other expression of religion. The Constitution ensures freedom of a worship. It does not insist on freedom from religion, but it offers us the ability to worship freely. But our civil rights movement, every movement for liberation, has had some kind of moral grounding. And so those of us who are Christians, particularly those of us who are Black, know that the history from the slave preachers in the gatherings in the woods to today's Poor People's Campaign and other events are being led by people who are calling on the power of God, not just the power of God, but the love of God, to say we need to establish a model. We need to establish a society that is possible because of the love that God has shown to the world through Jesus Christ. And when I was so struck by Ernest's experience back in 2016, and he had been given a moral framework with which to understand how he would respond. First, a moral framework to understand himself as a beloved and creation of God who was worthy of dignity and respect. And without those frameworks, then we will make choices that aren't strategic. Remember, Esther thought and planned for like a whole year before she actually cut out. And I'm not saying everything takes a year, but sometimes we just want to respond in mad and march. Civil rights movement, those young people who went to the counters, they trained. They learned from Jim Lawson and Bayard Rustin and others about not only the principles of nonviolent resistance, but the theology of it. John Lewis talked about nonviolent resistance was an understanding of God's movement in the world. He was committed to it as a theological foundation. And I think that's a role that religion can play, giving us these moral frameworks with which we both understand what's happening and help us to respond. Now, That said, we don't necessarily want to take up arms. When I was in South Africa in June, there was a British man who said, "Oh, I hear that some Americans are ready to take up arms." And I said, there aren't people taking up arms in my community thinking that they're going to take down the Capitol or even take down the president. I said, we understand how to fight and resist in different ways, but we have to convince our people that resistance is a part of the living out of our faith. It is an expression of our faith to resist evil, to resist immorality, to resist those things that harm God's creation and harm God's people. I got a letter from a lay person in Kansas just last week, white man, telling me that he was just really concerned about the direction of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, and that we're moving away from the gospel, and all this time that we're spending on justice is not what Jesus calls for. And we need to be focused on telling people about the love of God and evangelizing, because our churches are getting smaller. And I hope that you will change your ways and lead our church back to God and away from all this justice stuff. That was sort of the gist of his comment. For me, evangelism is about sharing the good news of Jesus. And what is the good news of Jesus? Jesus came that we might have life, the Bible says, and that we would have it more abundantly. So if I'm going to talk to you about who Jesus is, one of the most powerful ways I can show up is to say, not only am I going to maybe feed you a hot meal in the basement of my kitchen, but I'm going to be demonstrating at the state legislature or city hall or wherever to ensure that you have a living wage. I'm going to be advocating with my legislators at the federal level that we need a minimum wage. We need health care that's affordable. We need education that's not dependent on the zip code in which we live or the value of the property in which we live. And when Christians and other people of faith are visible and vocal about advocating for those things on behalf of all of us, what that says, I hope, is that the Jesus that I serve has told me that you matter enough for me to put my own body on the line to ensure that you have what I want for myself. I can't just preach from a pulpit and have coffee with you after church and think that you're going to get the message. You need to see me putting that faith to action. And you need to see that first and foremost, I'm not trying to convince you to believe as I do. I'm simply honoring my faith to say, God loves you. God, you know, what's the text, the peaceable kingdom in Isaiah 11. The ancient prophets were giving us a vision of the world that would be possible. The world that would be possible. Not how many people we could get to walk down the aisle. Although that's part, you know, believing in Jesus, Jesus wasn't saying that so that we could build up the fellowship. Jesus was saying that if you love me, he said, feed my sheep. If you love me, you will love others as I have loved you. You will do this work if you love me. Jesus never said, if you love me, get people to join your church.
Let me share with everyone why I follow the leadership of President Teresa Hord Owens. For the same person who wrote you this letter, who obviously sees the faith as a cross between two candles. I follow Teresa Hord Owens because she believes in a Christ between two thieves.
Yeah.
And engaging the world matters to my faith. And if that isn't the ultimate reminder that we have an obligation to each other in the present, that we have to stay at the table, that matters. And if you have the luxury of just seeing the faith, not as something sacrificial, where lives like Viola Loizzo and Swerner Goodman and Cheney and Emmett Till and Jimmy Lee Jackson will be lost in this context, then you don't understand the Christ who died on a cross between two thieves. You might find yourself in a practice of a cross with two candles burning on each side, feeling good about yourself and not engaging the world.
Yeah.
Reverend, am I on solid theological grounds in this?
You're on such solid theological ground. And when I got the letter, I just kind of chuckled. And my chief of staff was like, "Do you want to respond to him?" I said, "I'm going to have to think about how I do the response such that I do not respond." I have a Christian response. My mother would want me to have a ladylike response, and that I don't, somebody once told me that I could cut people up with words and they wouldn't even know they'd been sliced. But some of us, we're able to have that kind of response, right? It's the Jesus in us, right? That softens and deals with that kind of stuff. But I think you're on such strong theological ground. That's really the whole story of my book. We start with what we believe about God. And if we believe these things that we say we believe, then we have to be that in the world. People aren't just going to knock on our doors and want to come. As wonderful as worship will be, people are hurting. They're hungry. They're frustrated. They don't have hope. People haven't been exposed. And if all our faith is to make you feel unworthy, to make you feel as though you've done nothing right, to make you feel as though you're just dirty and you don't meet our standards, that your pants are too low and your skirt is too short, that's not the first encounter or message we need to have with people in the street or in our doors. Ernest has said this before. He always felt like the church was calling him to perfection, right? He had to be something in order to be accepted. That's not what Jesus says. If you look at the crazy crew he assembled, those 12 people, in fact, none of them were intellectual powerhouses. None of them were rich. Many of them had attitudes. Some of them were ambitious, or their mothers were ambitious, James and John. Judas was you have to cut Judas some slack, because even though we blame Judas for having, betrayed Jesus, there are scholars who believe that Judas did that because he was such a zealot. He wanted liberation so badly. He just didn't think Jesus was pursuing it in an earthly way fast enough or in the right way. And when he comes to really understand what he's done, then, sadly, he takes his life. But Jesus took this group of 12 and the model, who were all very different, none of whom in their own right should be leading anything. And he asked them to take this message of God's limitless love. And he said, if you do that, I'll do the drawing. You just be faithful. You just model the love that I've shown you. He never said organize churches. He never said have conventions. He never said create protocol, right? He never said elect general ministers and presidents. He never said any of that. He said, love others as I've loved you. If you love me, you take care of these people. And I go back to that image in Isaiah 11, because if we believe that the Messiah has come, if you believe in however you call the holy, if you believe in that, don't you want to build a world that aligns with that? I think that's our work. And if we're just going to, go through our liturgy on Sunday and say, oh, all that stuff out there has nothing to do with us, we're not even paying attention to the needs of the people who are gathered among us, whom we've called to minister and serve. So this letter really has just served to, there'll be some kind of written editorial that I'm going to post on my social pages. I need to sit and be quiet with it a while and let the anger burn off so that I can speak with both pastoral and prophetic tones.
Madam President, we have about a minute and 30 seconds before we come forward at the hard break. In this moment, having listened to you, I think about Dietrich. I think about Bonhoeffer. I think about how to confront empire and be true to the faith at the same time. Madam President, about 1 minute.
Yeah, Dietrich, said silence is complicity, and many of them have said that. The Barmen Declaration of Karl Barth, the Kairos document in South Africa, all of these things leaning into people of faith, resisting injustice in their local settings. And to not do so is really a sign of faithlessness.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. This is Moving Mountain Mondays with the General Minister and President of the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ in the United States and Canada, the first person of color and second woman to lead the denomination, with a priority of welcoming all to the Lord's table and God's as God has welcomed us. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. More with Dr. Teresa Hort Owens when we come forward.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Dorian Johnson, a key witness to the 2014 police shooting of a black man, Michael Brown, in Ferguson, Missouri, has been shot and killed at age 33. Police say one person is in custody.
It was just a lot going on. It was a lot of screaming, also like arguing.
Johnson was walking with Brown the day he was fatally shot by Officer Darren Wilson. Former President Obama and rapper Kendrick Lamar are both Emmy winners this year. Obama earned his third Emmy for narrating Netflix's Our Oceans, while Lamar won for music direction on his Super Bowl 59 halftime show. It's Lamar's second Emmy, and he's also nominated again for Outstanding Live Variety Special. And a new study shows U.S. deaths from high blood pressure-related kidney disease have jumped nearly 50% in 25 years. Black Americans had the highest death rates, more than 3 times other groups, followed by Hispanics, with men also above average. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Still got those annoying mosquitoes, ants, crickets, and creepy spiders? Get them out for good. Call legendary Dewey Pest and Termite Control. Family run since 1929. Get a free inspection and evaluation at deweypest.com. That's deweypest.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The NFL will close the first week of the regular season with a diversity milestone that should go in the NFL record books. 16 of the 32 NFL teams had a black quarterback in their starting lineup. That's the highest number of black quarterbacks starting a season, number 1 on the depth chart. One of those 16 is former USC quarterback Caleb Williams. You will see Williams leading the Chicago Bears against Minnesota in tonight's Monday Night Football game. The other 15, Spencer Rattler of New Orleans, Kyler Murray of Arizona, Dak Prescott of Dallas, Lamar Jackson of Baltimore, Patrick Mahomes of Kansas City, Jalen Hurts of Philadelphia, Geno Smith of the Las Vegas Raiders, Russell Wilson of the New York Giants, Justin Fields of the New York Jets, Michael Penix of Atlanta, Jordan Love of Green Bay, rookie Cam Ward of Tennessee, and Bryce Young of Carolina. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio that's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Hi, I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., inviting you to join me weekdays at 12 noon, right after Tavis Smiley, here on KBLA Talk 1580. As a law school graduate and a theologian with a firm grasp of our body politic given almost 2 decades in Congress, my show is the fresh new home of an authentic, uncompromised quest for transformation and salvation, both personal and collectively, as I vigorously interrogate the theological and symbolic meanings embedded in our society. I promise to leverage my knowledge of history, theology, and both international and domestic issues to imagine an inclusive vision for the future, which I hope will inspire all of us to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as a given, not just an aspiration. So join me weekdays at 12, Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, only on...
During this time, it's important for everyone to know your rights. The 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendments in the U.S. Constitution protects every one of us, regardless of immigration status. The 4th Amendment requires a judicial warrant to search your home. The 5th protects your right to remain silent, and the 6th gives you the right to an attorney. Just remember,
No warrant, no key. My privacy. You don't have to speak. No lawyer inside. Don't say your thing. thing. Yeah, we all got rights.
Hey, we all got rights.
Let's go.
You're still glowing, flirting, grooving. You still got it. But your immune system weakens as you age, making it harder to fight flu, pneumococcal pneumonia, RSV, and COVID-19. Vaccines are a key part of any health routine and help strengthen your immune response. Ask your doctor or pharmacist which vaccines you need. Schedule in minutes at vaxassist.com. Sponsored by Pfizer.
There's nothing like when you get that part from eBay and it just fits. Yeah, the first time. So you can do less of this and get right back to more of this. At eBay, you'll find all the parts you need, guaranteed to fit, at prices you'll love. Sounds good, doesn't it? eBay, things people love. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk
1580. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Tomorrow, Chicago Alderman Lamont Robinson. Chicago is getting ready for a major confrontation with the federal government, and we are going to start bringing elected officials and others through the show, as well as in the city of Los Angeles, so that we can learn some of the lessons of what Los Angeles has already learned as Chicago and Louisiana, New Orleans, Baltimore, Maryland, and other cities around the country prepare themselves for a federal occupation. Expect on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, and I'm sure on Dominique DePrima, as well as Tavis Smiley's show, these guests to be coming through our show to talk about what it means to live under occupation. We'll definitely be focusing on it here on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. In this hour, our very special guest is Reverend Teresa Howard Owens, the General Minister and President of the Christian Disciples of Christ in the United States and Canada. Dr. Owens, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you, my brother, for having me each week. It's good.
I'm honored to be on this show with you. Listen, you had some insights and some thoughts on the idea of the occupation, of Roman occupation and what it entailed. I share with some people, and I'm going to certainly share it right now and very quickly. I'm going to share this. Whether you read the Bible as a faith document, which is your choice, or you read it as a historical document. If it's a book of history, which it's worth reading in and of itself just for those purposes, and billions of people around the world are reading that history and looking for insights from that history, when Reverend Dr. Teresa Howard Owens talks about the Roman Empire and the role that empires have played and their intersectionality with faith, and how our faith overcame empire, over time, in time and over time, there's a lot to be said about the value in the book at this hour.
Yes, yes.
Dr. Owens?
Yes. That Roman occupation, and in all of my Bible study, even before I even entered ministry, I always made it a practice of researching, right, the historical context of what's happening, and even learning before I went to seminary, that just like we read any other kind of history, we always have to know who wrote it, why, to whom, what's the historical background and context, and then you have to parse it accordingly. But Roman occupation, some of the characteristics of Roman occupation in the ancient world that we're actually seeing today from the Trump administration in LA and DC, visible presence of force, right? Just the visual. I think, and ironically in DC, the visual presence of force has been on the National Mall, in the tourist areas. There's, every city has crime of some sort, but those places, we don't need tanks in front of the Washington Monument. They're not there to actually police action. They're there to be a sign of the empire's presence, to both impose fear and terror, and a notion that someone's watching, you're not in control, we are in control. So that visible presence as I talked about earlier, the soldiers being able to move through the streets. They could see you with your mule laden with goods moving down the road, and they could just decide, Jesse, I'm taking your mule. Because we're going over here to build a viaduct. And by the way, you're now pressed into service and you have to go and be my labor. Political control, right? Violating all of the rules of law that our country has set up. The idea that there's such control even over the minds of our highest court, the Supreme Court justices, the control over our legislature and those who are in the Republican Party. Those people are not paying attention to the rule of law. They're not even, Amy Coney Barrett in her book talks about, my job is just to say what the law is I'm not supposed to apply any morality or faith sense to it. It's like, no morality. When have human beings and even the common law ever operated without morality? So you've got political control, you've got economic exploitation, this idea that I'm going to use tariffs and all these other levers, not to make it better for the people, but so that those who sit at the top of the empire actually get more. Trump's kids, was it Eric, just within a space of a week, made $5 billion. There are people who are benefiting off of these tariffs and off of these changes, and it's not us. And then trying to have a cultural influence on our education, saying what books we can read. These are all things that the Roman Empire did, controlling what books you could read and trying to establish among these occupied territories that it's the Roman way of thinking about things. It's Roman culture that is the higher order of how we look at the world. The idea that people view any mention of slavery as anti-American. The idea, who was it, Eric Schmidt, a senator who was just saying America is a white country. We came here, we established it. These other people, don't belong here. Having that kind of cultural influence and control are all very similar signs of empire from the ancient times till now. Every authoritarian ruler in history has done all of those things, tried to control the politics, the economics, and now the cultural influence. Trump is trying to run the Kennedy Center. It's
wants to name it after Melania.
And wants to name it after Melania. And it's just, but anyway, I just think that these are important signs that this is not having chose the right candidate and enacting what the people wanted them to do to create a more perfect union.
Madam President, there is the resistance that we can engage in personally, whatever level we can function, to try and have influence on the outcome of what we are confronting as a people. I was reading an Ezra Klein's article in the New York Times, either yesterday or today's article. And Ezra says that Congress needs to stop funding this, that as we head into this budget season, that defunding or stop funding of Trump's takeover might be the most supreme level of resistance that's available to us at this hour. President, I know that President Barber is regularly on Capitol Hill. I know that we're all part of that movement. Your thoughts, Madam President?
And I think you're right. One of the I was in a session with the National Council of Churches Board, and you mentioned Emmanuel Cleaver, and I asked him in that session. We had invited Democratic and Republican senators to come and talk to us. This is back in May in DC, and of course, only the Democrats showed up. But I said, Reverend Cleaver, we need to understand, if people out there need to understand, what levers do we have, right? If we don't have the numbers in Congress or the Senate, everything is a tough fight. And he said it's really important that people understand, first of all, the way the Senate and the Congress work, we don't have it. But what's lacking is the will by the people who are the majority, or even just enough of them to come to the other side. I think that would be the best way for Congress. If Congress would act, Congress is even abdicating its own authority over the purse. And that's one of the biggest problems. If they would act, the courts couldn't say that Congress can't do those things, right? Because that's what's actually legislated. But I do agree, and it's a matter of we see a party that has the majority, that it sees its success and its forward future tied to this creation of a very authoritarian and fascist empire. And so when I'm in conversation with legislators, I'm always asking them, help me understand the levers of law, the paths to resistance, even just little things that they will tell you. And I'm sure you experienced this when you're in Congress. Phone calls matter, right?
Yes, they do.
That legislators pay attention to phone calls. If we could ever get over the fact that, the 60s are over, we don't need to march and we don't need to protest, our visibility in numbers matters in all these places. The screenshots of thousands of people on Labor Day all over the country marching and protesting. I was watching a clip earlier today of Trump at the US Open, and he's being booed. Do you know that the networks were banned from giving sound, from sharing the sound of the boos? And so the only way it was captured was by people taking personal video. So when we have a press that's not even brave enough to just simply tell the truth and let it be what it is, we have to be bold enough to understand we have to amplify our voices together, not be afraid to show up, to be visible, and operate from a moral center and a prophetic understanding of witness. But we have to, like Esther, strategize and think through how we're going to do it. That's what our forebears did in the 60s. They educated one another. They planned. They didn't just go into a city and say, we're going to show up at this corner. They understood where they were going, what they were going to say, and what the levers were that they were going to pull.
Madam President, I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580. More with Teresa Horde Owens when we come forward.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I want to tell her that
We asked seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your Senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
During this time, it's important for everyone to know your rights. The 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendments in the U.S. Constitution protects every one of us, regardless of immigration status. The 4th Amendment requires a judicial warrant to search your home. The 5th protects your right to remain silent, and the 6th gives you the right to an attorney. Just remember,
no warrant, no key, my privacy. You don't have to speak. No lawyer inside. Don't say a thing. Yeah, we all got rights.
Hey, we all got rights.
Ron had a tax problem he just couldn't handle on his own.
I owed the IRS taxes for over 5 years, but I didn't have any money to pay the taxes.
Those years cost him dearly.
Most of it was fees and interest. It was horrible.
Ron finally called in the pros.
I called Optima Tax Relief, and boy, am I happy I did.
The leading tax resolution firm, Optima, is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau. They've resolved over $1 billion for their clients. Ron was overjoyed.
They settled my account with IRS. I was ecstatic. They are a lifesaver. They are. I am so happy.
Take Ron's advice and call Optima now for a free consultation.
Yeah, don't do like I did and wait. Call Optima Tax Relief. Do it now. You'll be ecstatic like me.
Call 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077.
Optima Tax Relief.
Testimonial deal from an actual client. Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Los Angeles Regional Food Bank is on a mission to fight hunger and provide nutritious food to those in need across our community. They partner with federal, state, and local programs advocating for better policies and funding for critical hunger relief programs like Cal Fresh, the Emergency Food Assistance Program, and the Child and Adult Care Food Program. The food bank works with coalitions and local representatives to make sure hunger is addressed in every district of LA County. They also run nutrition education campaigns, raise hunger awareness, and source nutritious food for distribution, all while supporting regulations that allow food pantries to operate safely. Want to help? Visit lafoodbank.org or call 323-234-3030 to volunteer or find a food bank near you. Together, we can ensure that no one goes hungry in Los Angeles County. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. Remember, download the podcast. On this Moving Mountain Mondays, our very special guest and regular contributor is none other than the General President and Minister of the United Disciples of Christ Church in both the United States and Canada, Teresa Hord Owens. I want to welcome Dr. Hord Owens back on our program at this point, but I also want to ask her a cataclysmic question. Most of my life, I've lived under the rules as best I possibly could. Everyone knows I've been to prison. But certainly the Constitution itself, my faith has been there that somehow through the amendment process, we can improve our nation. I've even had the privilege of having, well, in terms of my cognitive life and my understanding, since Lyndon Johnson, I've had some faith in presidents and their capacity to become different people. Mm-hmm. And I've rested my faith there. My faith in our institutions as an American citizen has now been shaken. Mm-hmm. My faith in the Constitution has been shaken. My faith in the capacity of the church to deliver the kind of justice that I'd like to see as instant as tea has been shaken. Mm-hmm. Help me, Madam President. Help me understand the rock that I need to place my faith in at this hour.
Yeah.
So that I just don't give up on the idea of faith altogether.
Yeah. Just the notion for me of, and I talk about it all the time, of God's limitless love, that what we see before us is chaos and darkness over against an understanding of a creator and a divinity who is beyond anything that we could imagine, that even our most eloquent words are inadequate to describe, who simply asks a very basic thing of us, and that is to love, to love God, love neighbor, and to align all that we are with that in terms of the choices we make and the priorities we make. I've been doing, when I think about these issues, I remind people that you have to have some kind of spiritual life. You really do. And I am less concerned, although I firmly believe Jesus is the way, I'm less concerned about how you order that spiritual life, but that you simply have an understanding that there's got to be something beyond who you are. I think from that has to be a matter of where our hope is, because the rock that is higher than we are, right? But also Ephesians 3, now unto the one who is able to do far beyond anything that I could ask or imagine. Paul says in Philippians 1:6, I have confidence in this, that the one who began a good work in me will complete it.
Say that again now. Say that one more time.
Philippians 1:6. I actually have it. I have that address engraved on a little silver bar that I wear all the time. I almost feel like I'm not fully dressed unless I have it on. I am confident in this, that the one who began the good work in you will complete it. And so the confidence can't be in the brilliance of our leaders. For me as a Christian minister, the confidence is not in the faithfulness of the congregation. The confidence is not in presidents or senators or congressmen. My confidence is in God. And if I align myself with those ideas, William Barber and Repairs of the Breach, they have a methodology that we used as a group of leaders gathered on Inauguration Day in Memphis, and we listened to the inaugural address. And there several of us were asked to reflect on the address, but they had given us this framework that I found very powerful. It's called prophetic listening. I think I've mentioned it before. Prophetic listening says, okay, when I'm hearing the policy or looking at the action, who's harmed? Who's being harmed by this? Who's benefiting? What does my faith tell me about the nature of these things? How should I then respond in terms of action? So if as people of faith, you don't have any kind of spiritual inner life, prayer life, if you're not familiar with your sacred texts, many Muslims and imams are encouraged to memorize as much of the Quran as possible. Many of our mainline predominantly white Christians aren't that interested in studying the Bible. They want to do good stuff, but they're not grounded enough in this word. When Jesus spoke against the empire, when he spoke to Pharisees, to Pilate, to other people, everything that came out of his mouth was grounded and rooted in scripture. Jesus he went away to pray and fast. He took care of himself. The Faith Table organization that I've been a part of, we meet every 2 weeks, but we took a break in August. A friend of mine, Reverend Dr. Leslie Copeland Toon, who's on the staff of the National Council of Churches and does a lot of advocacy work in DC. We were in a meeting and she's like, she's encouraging, the resistors must take radical rest. John Lewis made it through having his head bashed in because John Lewis, his faith was so deep. There are a few people I meet in life where I'm like, this person has just a spiritual depth and an aura. John Lewis had that. And I just believe as a faith leader, if we make those investments in our spiritual life, investments in the sacred text that we say, being the church we say we are, that Reverend Meeks preached a sermon one week and it said, it can't operate in you. The word can't come out unless it's in you, basically. So if you're not spending time with those resources, you're not going to have a framework with which to respond. You're not going to have the courage to resist. You're not going to be convinced not only of God's power, but of the essence of moral right on which you're standing. And if you don't kind of know that, you'll be afraid by the police who show up at your prayer rally. That rally that we had a couple weeks ago, we were singing and praying. I was locking arms with Walter McCrae. I had such a good time with him. And, author of The Black Presence of the Bible. And I got to fangirl with him a little bit. We went over to the door. These are preachers with obvious vestments on. They locked the door to the Dirksen Federal Building for 200 clergy who were simply praying. I'm not sure what they thought we would do, but the power of that presence in that moment, they finally let somebody in to deliver a letter to the U.S. Attorney's Office. But I firmly believe that unless we have those strong spiritual resources, it keeps us grounded and it gives us hope and it allows us to fight on.
Madam President has shared with us in a very special way that, and very kind and very sweet and very, very spiritually, she said, Jesse, you've had your faith in presidents, in Constitution, but you never set it on solid ground.
Mm-hmm.
Put your faith in God and in loving your neighbor as yourself. And upon that rock, we shall build a civilization.
Mm-hmm.
Jesse Jackson Jr., Madam President, thank you for being on our show on Moving Mountain Mondays. You moved it today. Madam President, I think I have your mute button on. I can't hear the president. You've been listening to Moving Mountain Mondays with Jesse Jackson Jr. and Reverend Dr. Teresa Hord Owens on KBLA Talk 1580. Until tomorrow, Tenacious Tuesdays.